Continuous integration for Looker projects. We're going to give you a little overview of the problems that we think that introducing the practice of continuous integration to Looker can solve. We'll tell you a little bit about continuous integration itself, some tooling and solutions that we use, and then an actual demo of a few workflows. So what problems are we trying to solve? First thing is entropy. Like a lot of things in life, if you leave them unattended, they start to decline. Analytics systems are no exception, especially in companies where things change all the time. So this presentation is about some techniques and ways to automate and prevent your analytics projects from becoming a mess. Do you remember the Academy Awards where the best picture was awarded to the wrong group of people? It turned out it was a very complicated process. There are multiple envelopes backstage and they got mixed up. Analytics can be the same. As companies grow, processes become more complex and humans introduce more errors. One of the problems is evolving schemas. So if you think about your upstream data, your data warehouse, your LookML models, and any dependent content, they're not coupled. Let's take this scenario. A field is renamed in Salesforce, your ETL process picks it up, a new field is added, the old one is removed. In LookML, the original field will be referenced, and any content that references that will essentially be broken. And if you think about all of the data sources that you have, particularly as more and more things are in the cloud, how many of these changes just happen every day and result in this sort of entropy? Another problem that we're trying to solve is less manual intervention. So developers choose schemas like the ones you see or data structures like the ones you see on the right-hand side, JSON or EAV schemas. They choose them because it's easy to add attributes to them. So we can add 3 new attributes to the process without making a table wider. Now what happens then is we have to model that manually in LookML, and people complain because there might be like a field that they think should be added but hasn't been added automatically. And another problem is as we grow our analytics teams and we have more and more code in LookML, it requires a consistent style to create maintainability. So if you look at this closet, just because we have hangers and we have shelves doesn't mean that people are going to adhere to the style guide that you've set up for it. So you need to start to enforce it. Right, so what do we mean by continuous integration? In Looker, as a review, everything that's a model, a join, dimensions, measures, explores, that's all managed in version-controlled code. Looker introduces this practice to analytics that software developers have been using for a long time. Continuous integration is building on top of that. A set of processes that automatically asserts new changes before being pushed to production for users to use. The automatically part is the sort of continuous part of continuous integration, and the changes part is the sort of integrating changes. So continuous integration, automatic change management. A good background read on continuous integration, Martin Fowler wrote up an article a long time ago now, but it just has the fundamentals if you want to get more into it. Another way to look at continuous integration would be what Henry Ford did to automobile manufacturing. It used to be that cars were sort of made one at a time and hard to improve that process. So he broke up the process into steps. He created quality checks amongst them, and the result for him was more cars, cheaper cars, better quality cars. So it all leads to analytic systems that are more stable, more complete, better understood, easier to collaborate between developers, and ultimately more resistant to entropy. Right, so a quick introduction to the tools that we'll use in the demo. First is GitHub Action. So this would be like your continuous integration or continuous deployment system. We're using GitHub because it's sort of probably the easiest to get started with, because most people host their Looker repos on GitHub. But people could use Travis, or they could use any continuous integration tool they want. One of the main tools we'll demo today is Spectacles. It's an open source tool, validates SQL against your databases and runs logic tests on a Looker branch. Another one is LookML, which is about automatic generation of LookML and manipulation of LookML. Another is the Looker SDK, which is a Python wrapper for Looker's API. And one we'll talk about briefly is Look at Me Sideways, which is style guide and linter for LookML. Right, so we'll get into the demo. Let's see it in action. Okay, so the first demo is Spectacles and Looker. There's quite a bit going on here. There are 4 steps that we're going to demo: checking out your branch and making changes, validating that local branch build, running data tests, opening a pull request, automated tests running, and finally fixing errors and committing changes. As a quick reminder, there's some built-in things into the IDE like auto-suggest and on-the-fly error checking that tell you that you've committed some sort of a human error in typing. This doesn't apply, of course, to SQL. That's where the next bits come in. Data tests. This tests logic, right? So in the example that you see on screen on the left-hand side, we're checking to make sure that when we join with another table that we don't cause a fan out, meaning that we have a primary key defined. And so, we create something, in the millions. We know that we won't have in the millions, at least this year, for a session count, and that'll run. So before we show it to you then, these are all the steps: validate LookML, commit changes, run the tests, open a pull request, and then Spectacles will do its magic with GitHub Actions. So let's see it. Okay, so I'll take you through a typical workflow, adding a new dimension. Somebody's asked us to add a new dimension called social engagement type. Mention social engagement type. And we'll go ahead and add a little typo there on purpose. Okay, so that all looks good. I save. I validate, which is going to make sure I don't have any syntax errors. I commit my changes. Adds social engagement type field. Okay, we commit. Now it's going to ask me to run logic tests. These are defined in a separate file in my case. Checking a few things where we've gotten in trouble before, making sure we're not introducing a new fan out, or that a field doesn't get nulled out. That looks okay. So the next thing is that we open a pull request. We'll actually do that on GitHub. Little description there, maybe close this ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll create the pull request. There are no conflicts with the base branch, meaning nobody else has tried to add that field in the meantime. And what you'll see happen next is automatically now some checks are being added. Spectacle SQL, it's going to test to make sure that the field that we've added and all the other fields actually validate against the database, which is an additional step. Okay, so checks have failed there. If I'm not sitting here watching this, I'll get a notification in Slack. So Spectacles tests failed for Ernesto Ungaro. See the action log for details. If I click on that and I click here, it'll actually tell me exactly what happened. Google Analytics GA sessions failed. Encountered an error while running this query. That field is not found inside that table. So what we can do is we can go back. We find our error. Go ahead and fix it. We save, and we go through a few more validations again. So we'll commit, fix this typo, commit. All right, we run the test one more time. Nothing's changed. That's great. And now we'll actually add to this pull request. I can view it. We'll see that those tests are actually going to be rerun now. Okay, brilliant. So now we're able to merge the pull request. So my manager or reviewer would actually do this step, merge the pull request, which would also pull a trigger to push it all to production. So if I come back here and I refresh the page, then you'll see that I can pull from production. Everything's great, and I should get a nice Slack notification. Spectacles test ran successfully for my branch. And I can see the action log for detail. So LookML generation demo. There's a good few steps in this. In our case here, we detect an upstream change. We do that through a schedule in this case, but you could be doing it through a variety of methods, including an API call that tells you that the schema's changed. Then we run a query through the Looker API that finds new fields in the EAV schema. That's passed as a Python object to PyLookML, which takes that object and generates new fields. It then checks them into GitHub and pushes to production. And then Spectacles can even check the new fields to make sure that nothing went wrong in the generation. So let's see that in action. So for generating LookML automatically, this is a perfect use case. You've got events that are coming in a field, and you've got a category that you might want to use in a label. What we've done is we're using PyLookML to generate this view custom events. At the moment, it's blank. The library can even create the file for you. If I refresh, what will happen is we'll get a new version from a pull request. So I pull from production, and for each field in that query, it's created a mesher with a filter on the value of event action. So this could be thousands of fields that it's auto-generating. If I come back here, then I refresh my development mode, or it's even been pushed to production already. We'll see that there's a set of filtered measures here, like remove from cart, add to cart, have been added. And finally, you'll also see that there was a notification sent out on Slack. 6 fields added to custom events view.lookml. This might be for like a BI, builds type of channel. So content validation. As a review, content validation is about making sure that any content, which is tiles, looks, dashboards that depend on any particular field to exist, that link is still there and allows you to find and replace content. This is still in its infancy as far as continuous integration goes, in that it's fairly manual at the moment. It's hard to tie a breaking change to a specific check-in or branch. What we've done for this is at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays with GitHub actions, we pull the SDK function content validation, and then we do a Slack notification telling you how many errors there are, how many tiles were validated, how many explorers were validated. Okay, so Look at Me Sideways, or LAMS, is a style guide and linter. I won't go into details about it or a demo because it's worth its own entire video in its own. It's an incredible project. What it is it's two parts. It's a style guide, so there are many rules that have been defined by the creators of the project. You can add your own. The one that you see there is like a table has to have a primary key defined. And then the linter part is kind of the enforcement part of those rules. And so again, when you go through the workflow of opening pull requests, etc., it'll tell you, hey, you've added a new table, and it doesn't have a description. It doesn't have the joins, don't have this. The primary keys don't have that. Incredible library called Look at Me Sideways. Right, so that concludes the video for continuous integration with Looker. Hopefully you can see how all these tools allow you to improve the quality of your analytics and increase the ability to serve your customers with better data. Thank you.